and welcome to Logan Sounds Off, where I talk about books, music, and a whole lot more. I'm your host, Logan Kelly. Hello and welcome to Logan Sounds Off. Today I'm interviewing John Brodeur. How are you, John?
I'm great. How are you, Logan?
I am brilliant, thanks for asking. For those who don't know you and don't know Bird Streets and all your other careers you've had as a musician, could you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, sure. I live in Brooklyn, New York. I'm based here in New York City. I've been making music for under the Bird Streets name. It's been about 5 or 6 years, but 6 or 7. But I started making music around 30 years ago, professionally. Had a bunch of bands through the 90s, and then started putting out albums under my own name around the year 2000. I had three or four, five, I don't remember now, solo records under the name John Brodeur. I also put out some music under the name of the Suggestions, which was a band I had for a little while. I had a band called Maggie Mayday, so those are all also me. But yeah, for the last little bit of time, it's been Bird Streets, the main thing.
So you've been definitely in the music, you've been a musician for a long time now. And I want to ask, because I talk to a lot of musicians, and usually I like to ask with the question, what were your influences and inspirations growing up listening to music?
Well, when I was, excuse me, when I was very small, I was sick. I was very sick for a while when I was quite young, and so I was just kind of locked in the house a lot with my parents' records, and they had all the Beatles records. So those are sort of the bedrock. I think for a lot of songwriters, the Beatles are sort of the home base. And let's see. Well, it was all the what other music was around then. My dad had some Led Zeppelin records, and my mom had some, you know, like Jim Croce, like singer-songwriter type stuff from the 70s. And then I was getting older and figuring out what my thing was. I guess it was in the 80s. It was like there was a little bit of a pop metal period, like Def Leppard and stuff. And then there, and then who didn't have that? If you were, I think anyone in any point of life should have a Def Leppard period.
My parents definitely did, I'd say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and but then also got into, later in the 80s as I was, starting to pick up the guitar and stuff, I found people like Elvis Costello. They Might Be Giants. I love them.
Yeah, they're brilliant.
Nirvana's first album came out when I was 16, and that was just like, oh, hey, this I can do this. This is my thing. So that made me want to start a band. It really did. I think that was the same way for a lot of people. Was we saw Kurt Cobain, and it was like, I want to do that. So yeah, all that stuff kind of comes together over the time. Everything I hear influences me, but those are probably the things that got me doing it.
I find that very interesting how you came through the kind of phases, and I thought it's very cool the way. Um, for people who think Nevermind was Nirvana's first album, it wasn't.
Right.
Bleach came before that,
Hmm.
and Bleach is very different to Nevermind.
It's very raw.
Personally, I'd say Nevermind is top tier, but I'd still like Bleach. But yeah, I think it's very cool that you took influence from that to start a band um, and become a musician. So that quickly leads me on to my next question. Have you ever been to any gigs growing up, or did you go to any gigs growing up?
Went to a lot of gigs growing up. Excuse me. I just had my breakfast. The my parents took me to gigs when I was small. They took me to some like stuff that I wouldn't necessarily pay for myself, but I think they took me to gigs from the time I was like 4 years old. I saw a bunch of bands when I was young, but the things that really that I was really into, and I saw Elvis Costello play when I was like 13 years old.
Whoa.
Yeah, that was big on the Spike tour. That was my first record of his, and it's not a lot of people's favorite one of his, but it means a lot to me, that record. And and seeing him at that time was just like it was another one of those like I think I want to do this. It was quite just figuring
Yeah.
out. It was kind of figuring out where I fit into the thing, but that's the one that I've kind of followed the whole way through my career was you know just try to write better songs and um, what else I saw. I mean, I saw Fugazi when I was 16, which was that
Guys,
was
you're brilliant.
huge. I didn't even know who they were, and my friend was like, "You got to come. It's $5. It's all ages. Let's go see them." And that changed my entire world seeing that band.
Fugazi are brilliant live. My dad went to see Fugazi in the SFX, said it was one of the best concerts he ever went to.
They were
Like,
incredible.
blew him out, like, blew his mind.
Um,
Um,
yeah, I mean, I've seen hundreds and hundreds of concerts. I mean, I've seen Prince a bunch of times before he passed. Seen Radiohead a bunch of times. I got to see Elliot Smith
nice.
play a few times when he was still alive. Some artists that really, really mean a lot to me, I got to see. So I think of that bunch of those kind of artists that were really formative to me, the only one that I maybe never got to see besides Beatles, and I've even gotten to see McCartney and Ringo, so that doesn't even count. But um, maybe Bowie is like the only one that I didn't get to see because he kind of stopped performing, 20 years ago,
Yeah.
long before he passed.
Yeah, I think everyone who didn't get to see Bowie wants to now see Bowie.
Yeah.
And I definitely wouldn't mind going to one of his concerts. So as a child, you started going to gigs at 4, you say, and that's amazing.
I
I
mean, I
only
was I was taken to gigs. I wouldn't say
like,
I.
yeah, you didn't really like buy the tickets and walk up to the gigs yourself, but you went to gigs, which is cool enough at a young age. So music's definitely part of your life. So I see a guitar in the background, and I want to ask, what kind of instruments did you play growing up?
When I was well, drums was my first love. When I was very, very little, I banged on everything in the kitchen. I made little drum kits out of pots and pans and stuff. My parents got me like the toy drum kit out of the back of the department store catalog when I was, maybe 4 or 5 years old, which I promptly destroyed. I just like bashed through the heads of that thing in like a day. Um, but then, yeah, when it was entering like second grade, I guess, when they started handing out instruments or whatever year that was, I guess fourth grade. Uh, First was given a flute. Even though I wanted to play drums, they were like, "Here's a flute. This is easier to carry, I guess." Um, which I think the flute's a beautiful instrument. It wasn't for me at the time, so I switched to saxophone and I played alto and tenor and baritone saxophone up through high school into a little bit of college. And that was my formal music training, besides a couple years of piano lessons. And then somewhere along the way, I guess around the time I was 11 or 12, I got an electric guitar for Christmas, and there we go. Then I got a drum kit, and it was all that, rock and roll stuff from there on out.
Yeah, so you've gone everywhere. Your guitar, flute, drums, saxophone, piano. So you play a lot of instruments, and I think that's very interesting. And I'd say it will probably be a big part of you making music to be able to play all these instruments. Um, but when you when did you decide to become a musician? Because it's not something that you get on the spot, because as you said, you went through all those phases. So
Hmm.
when did you decide that you were going to be a musician?
I excuse me. I think it was sort of decided for me. Like I don't remember ever just one day being like, I want to do that. I just knew it from the time that I first kind of encountered music. I knew I wanted to be in it. Um, and maybe there may have been a little period when I thought maybe my role in that was to be like a DJ or something, but like um, I mean the old school DJs that actually played music on the radio, not like the club DJs, but
Yeah.
um, but yeah, I think it was around the end of high school when I really started writing songs, and playing them in front of people and seeing how people responded to that. It was like, I think this is where I want to go. Um, at least as a songwriter, I mean, up until that, always knew I wanted to play music and do something with it, but actually like pursuing it as a path, it was probably probably junior or senior year of high school.
That's, do you know what? I think that question, when I think about it, like, when did you decide to become a musician or become part of it? Um, I always am very interested to hear what people have to say about it. But the one thing that I know about it is that it doesn't come in very quickly. But for you, it seemed it did, because once you heard music, you kind of thought in your head, I'd love to be a part of this. And that's very interesting. So obviously you started your career a little while ago. But when you did start, did you see yourself coming this far in your musical career?
Did I see myself still doing it when I was older? Yes.
Okay.
Uh, yeah, I mean, yeah, I mean, yeah, I should put some perspective on this. I was just about to say something a little bit self-effacing, like "come this far," like still, whatever. But um, yeah, I've gotten to do some cool things, and yeah, I think I always knew it was the path I wanted to go down, and I always wanted to write songs and create beautiful things for other people to hear, and yeah, that's not something that gets old. So, every new song, every new record is like it just makes it all new, all fresh again. So, yeah, I could, I never saw an endpoint to that. I mean, if one day I do something and I'm just like, okay, whatever, then maybe it's over. But so far so good.
Do you know what? I think what you said there, the last line, so far so good. I think a lot of people, there's a thing where it's like people dwell on the past and they worry about the future. And you obviously very much stick with the present in your music career.
I try to. I think I do a lot of the dwelling and the worrying in the songs themselves. My songs are a little, I've had people listen to my record and get on one of these calls and be like, "So my first question is, are you okay?" Like that kind of
Jesus,
stuff.
God.
I mean, it's funny. It's funny. I wear a lot of the emotional stuff in the lyrics, but that's my diary sort of. But yeah, it's yeah, I just try to like do what's interesting to me musically now and keep it fresh that way, other than every once in a while I'll go back and dig an old thing out and work on it and and try to make it new again. But yeah, just try to always keep it moving.
That's brilliant. That's the perfect answer in my opinion. And obviously you're still keeping it moving with um your current project, Bird Streets. And when I heard Bird Streets, I thought, oh, that sounds like a band name. And I went, okay, so he's a solo artist. And where did the name come from? So where did the name Bird Streets come from?
Well, when I first heard Bird Streets, I also thought that sounds like a band name, and
Yeah.
sure enough, it is. Um, I was in California the first time I worked with Jason Faulkner for for the first Bird Streets record, and I was like staying on an air mattress in my friend's crappy little Hollywood apartment. It was like 50 degrees. The whole thing was pretty miserable. It was very starving artist vibe. Uh,
Oh, God.
no, it's good. It's funny. Like sometimes you need to struggle a little bit I wrote some great songs, just like I have to get up and go for a walk because it's so cold here. Um,
I think if you told that part of you back then that it was funny about the starving musician kind of thing that was happening, I don't think he'd be laughing. But
I thought it was,
sorry.
I think at the time I thought it was like funny, but not like funny, ha ha. Just like, oh boy, this is funny. Um,
Yeah,
But
peculiar
yeah, so
more.
I was just kind of going for these long walks at night and just wandering around Los Angeles trying to write lyrics, trying to think of what songs I was going to take to the studio the next day, and kind of looking at a map on my phone, and I saw this place called the Bird Streets, which is it's very high-end neighborhood up in the Hollywood Hills where a lot of like people like Leonardo DiCaprio live, like really expensive mansions and All the streets are named after birds, like Blue Jay Way and whatnot. And
It's
I
quite
think that,
lovely.
yeah,
I wouldn't mind living on Blue Jay Way.
I'm sure it's quite nice. I've driven through it. And that's about as close as I'll get to living there probably. But you know, with you know, just all up in the hills so you can see everything, and it's just beautiful. Um, and that was like an interesting contrast to where I was at that point, like physically, like sleeping on an air mattress. And then there was an interesting what do you call it? Kind of kismet with where I had just come from a couple years before that, which was in upstate New York. I lived in Albany for about 10 years before I moved to Brooklyn. And all the streets in downtown Albany are also named after birds. So I like the name had stuck with me, and these couple things came together, and it was like maybe that's the name for me. And people seem to like it. I think it looks good on a t-shirt.
I think it would look good on a t-shirt. And do you know what? Something that a lot of people don't know is that band names who you might think are really out there and must have taken a long time to think about, they just came to a lot of people. For example, the band Primus,
Hmm.
who I like, who are quite popular in like the alternative rock and part of music. Primus is a washing machine. That's literally where they got it
Is that
from.
right? Huh.
Yep, AC/DC, that's from a battery.
Right.
So I mean, Bird Streets is a
Simple.
really unique name in that way because
Simple.
it was so accidental that it was brilliant to find that name. So under Bird Streets now you've got two albums, and for one of your albums, Lagoon, I think, you worked with Pat Sansone, who worked with Wilco and Zach Jones. How did you find that experience? That must have been amazing.
Well, Pat, I was a fan of Wilco. I've been a fan of Wilco since they came out, so going on 30 years, my gosh. Excuse me. And you know, Pat joined in the 2000s. I had heard his name, you know, outside of that too, because he also has a band called the Autumn Defense, which is kind of kind of like a 70s kind of pop band, like very singer-songwriter pop stuff, which is the stuff I kind of like was saying I kind of grew up on. So really melodic and pretty. So I was definitely a fan of like all the stuff that he was doing. And then a friend of mine who was a film director, um, we were working on a music video, and she was like, "You would get along with Pat," and I was like, "I'd love to meet him sometime." And she like called him right there. We were driving in the car. We had an hour to kill, so we just talked for the duration of the drive, and hit it off pretty well, you know, verbally. And then the next month, I think it was only about a month later. Yeah, I went down to Nashville and started working with him, and we made the first batch of songs for Lagoon. And then about a year later, I went back down there, and we went down to Memphis, and we got to work with Jody Stevens from Big Star and with John Davis from Super Drag. So yeah, he's working with Pat's been great. He's one of the best dudes of. He's just like the most easygoing guy. Like got that really kind of
That's all you need in a person,
yeah,
easygoing.
sweet Southern kind of vibe. You know, just it's all good. You know that kind of thing.
Yeah,
I love that.
that's
And so musical. I mean, everything he touches is he can play everything and like make it sing. It's something else, man.
that's a quality that a lot of people like. If a lot of I think an easygoing person is good enough, then somebody who can play a guitar and all that and really help you, that's brilliant. So Pat Sansone sounds like the perfect guy for your album, and I think that it's something that if you're not working with someone that you don't if you're working with someone that you don't like, it's going to make it a lot harder the job. So it's nice to hear that you're able to work with him without any problems. um
That's
so
what we look
which
for. We try to. That's what I try to
sorry,
look for. Is I try to look for some, you know, somebody that I can feel comfortable, you know, sharing ideas with.
yeah,
I feel like the other person is a little bit of an antagonist. It's not. It's gonna. At least for somebody like me, I don't respond well to that. So as long as if somebody makes me feel comfortable, better work will get done. It's like what you're
yeah,
saying. Yeah, yeah.
that I think a lot of people are like that, that they feel if I'm working with them and it's working, I'll keep. I'll. It's like if if work the system works.
There you go.
I
Yeah.
I always like that saying. So obviously you've been doing this with you've been working with really cool people like Pat Sansone and also Jason Faulkner, like
Mm.
you said, on your first album. So which album did you find hardest to write, if you did find one hardest to write?
Hardest to write. Oh, that was definitely Lagoon, because Lagoon is a record. This latest record is a lot of it is about um, breaking up with my wife, which was that's not fun. Divorce isn't fun. So hope you never have to find that out firsthand. So yeah, it was a struggle record, this one. The first record I wrote mostly with Jason, and it was just this, dawning of a new day, a new band name and new project and new collaborative, relationship. So that whole thing was just a blast to, this one was a lot more of digging real.
Heavy kind of record.
This one I had to dig real deep, this latest record.
Yeah.
But it was also like it was hard, but it was good hard, it was necessary to get some of that stuff out. Like I said, the music is kind of my diary, so um I had a lot to write about, and it's all there. Yeah. Plus,
That uh,
there's a couple songs on it that are sort of pandemic related, that are also
yeah.
related to other struggles. I quit drinking to 10, 11 years ago, and there's a little bit about that too. So like, there's a lot of struggle in there, but I think that for me as a songwriter, like that's the best way to work through a struggle is to write about it and to
Release
express it
it into
and
the music.
to share it with people, because other people go through that stuff, and then you think sometimes when you're writing it and you're going through it that you're the only person, and then you write that song and you share it and somebody comes back and they're like, man, that helped me get through my breakup, or I've
Yeah.
been there, man, and I totally feel it, and it's like, we're all connected that way, and that's
Relatability, that it's something that's nice about an album, that it I don't have it obviously firsthand, but if somebody would come back to you and tell you, oh, I can relate, but with da 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 da, I'd say that can kind of sometimes maybe push you to make more music and share
yeah.
more. So I think that's quite interesting. So, what do you think a song needs to be good? Obviously, you've done two brilliant albums, so you can tell me all about this now. But what do you think a song needs to be good? And that's from mastering to what kind of instruments you think are key for a song and stuff like that from your own experience.
Hmm. For a song to be good, gosh, I don't know. I feel like that's kind of a loaded question. It's sort of a moving goalpost, because there are songs that are uh the songs that are great without really much of anything. Like I just heard Janis Joplin singing Mercedes Benz last week, which is just her in a, like
That, that
backstage
that's
after a show just
that's
singing a cappella, and it's like that doesn't need
it's
anything else.
very true.
You know what I'm
That's
saying?
very true.
And it's just one verse that, it's just one thing that repeats. So it's yeah, that's such a tough question to answer. For me, it's,
I'm
if
feeling
I
kind of awkward now.
no, no, no. I mean, because it's an interesting question, but that I never really think about. I just know it when I hear it, kind of. But I don't think a lot about it. Like I know that for me, writing a song, I'll work on it until it makes me feel something. Um, until I don't know. I don't know how to put a point on it though. I don't know. I'm not always sure when it's ready, when it's done, when it's perfect, if it's ever perfect. What is perfect? You know what I mean?
Well,
It's a lot
I mean,
of,
you're saying that you don't know, but really you've just given me an answer there.
yeah, I guess.
When something clicks,
Yeah,
then you know it's the perfect song. When you
there is
know it
that.
all clicks in your head.
Perfect is a big word to use, but yeah, I mean, yeah,
True.
I
That is
I
true.
I work endlessly at the thing though, because I mean, I work on the lyrics, I change melodies right up until the time that I finish singing it, and sometimes afterward. Like there was a couple songs on the last record, and maybe one on this one where we thought we were done, And then like a week or two later, I'll call the guys and be like, "Can I come back in and re-record this part of this verse?" Just because I changed a line. I went for a walk listening to it, and I was like, "Ooh, this line could be better." So I always am just tinkering with it to just try to make it a little better. But chasing perfect is, that's
Yeah, tinkering can be very helpful with the
yeah,
song,
yeah.
because I heard this thing once in a drama thing that was once played on the radio. Now I'll say this woman was kind of mental, but it was still a good piece of advice. She said this, because this is to do with music as well. She was talking about a book. When you think it's perfect, keep doing it.
Right.
And then when you think you've done your best, check over it and continue doing it. And then when you have the best, rewrite it again. And then only if you feel that it's right, it's right.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's very interesting, that it just shows the process of making a song isn't a one day kind of process.
It can be.
I
Absolutely
mean,
can be. But like
it sometimes can be to get the lyrics and stuff, but to make the full song, it can take a little while.
Yeah, I mean, there's no right answer there. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
some things are just made off the cuff, and that's it. That's all you need. I mean, some of the best songs that I've written literally were written in 20 minutes. Like it's just you're channeling a thing. You don't know where it's coming from, and it's like, wow, this just came out of me. Like, what is this? I didn't have this 20 minutes ago, and here's this perfect new song. Sometimes it is that easy, but yeah, I'm also a big proponent of just working at it and working at it and working at it. So yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah.
I feel like if someone was to sit down with you now and they were trying to become a musician, I think you'd set them on your way now with this advice. This is brilliant. But I'd like to move on from your music to other people's music. I want to ask you, do you have any albums that you would recommend? Any album recommendations that you've been listening to recently that you think are brilliant?
Records well, stuff I've been listening to recently. I've been listening to this band called the Beths from New Zealand. Great indie pop, power pop band. Very melodic. All of their songs are great, every single one of them. Digging the new Arlo Parks stuff. But De La Soul is streaming. I think they're over here somewhere. They're right behind me. All the De La Soul stuff has started streaming finally, and I've just been glomming that down because it's been so hard to access for a long time. I don't know if you know them, but they're a hip hop band that came out in the late
Yeah,
80s.
so I think they worked with the band called Gorillas.
Right. So
At
they're
one
the
stage.
rappers on is it Feel Good Inc. Is that the one they're on? Yeah.
Uh,
Right?
I
Or is there
think, yeah, it
or
wasn't Feel Good Inc. because on Clint Eastwood it was Del the Funky Homosapien.
Dell's on Clint Eastwood, right? Another great rapper. Yeah,
Yeah, and
on
then
Feel Good Inc. Right? Yeah, but
yeah,
that's probably the biggest thing that people know them from in the last 20 years or so. But yeah, they're foundational hip hop band. Big fan of them. I don't know. I listen to all this stuff. I got some records on the floor here. I got some Curtis Mayfield over here. Listen to that record religiously at least once a month. That's like biblical. Got the Buzzcocks
uh,
tattoo on my arm.
Buzzcocks, brilliant.
Oh my God, I love
I
them.
got a Buzzcocks badge. It isn't as die hard as your tattoo, but it's good enough for me.
You're not old enough for tattoos yet. Jellyfish, always listening to Spilt Milk
Jellyfish.
is a top 5 record for me. What else? Portishead, La Portishead. I mean,
Portishead, their
these are sort
album
of
Dummy, amazing.
yeah, yeah. All three of their records are incredible.
Yeah, they had only 3, and I think if they had more, like that'd be
It's still a
brilliant. And
chance.
does that include the live one?
It's funny because I never include that in that they have 3 studio albums, but the live one might be their best album. I love
Oh,
that
big
live
time.
record.
I bought that on like a double album. I have
Yeah,
that on double album, and it's just wow. The Sour
incredible.
Times sounds completely different.
Yeah, with the
Way, way,
strings.
way,
Oh my
way
God.
different. But
Uh,
brilliant.
yeah, and the Cure. I got the Cure over here. I'm going to see them in a
In
few months.
Between Days isn't that on that album?
It is. It is.
Yeah,
Yeah,
because
and Nightwish
I'd
is.
recognize that album cover anywhere.
Yeah,
Brilliant band, The Cure. One of the
but yeah,
first albums I bought was The Cure on CD.
Which one?
Greatest Hits, because
Oh.
I couldn't find any other ones, but I knew a couple of the songs on Greatest Hits.
Mm-hmm.
So I got that one, but there's some weird songs in that, like Mint Car and stuff.
Oh, so this is the later greatest hits one, right? Yeah, not the
Yeah.
singles, right? Yeah, yeah. I mean, their earlier records are kind of better, but like they're
Yes,
they're
I
pretty,
definitely would agree.
they are pretty consistent throughout, though. It's
There's a
always
pink.
always
Which
relevant.
Pink album did they do again? What's that called again?
Pink,
Yeah,
pink.
it's got pink on the album cover.
Hang on. Are we thinking about Kiss Me, Kiss Me, Kiss Me?
No,
Or that's kind of
it
more red. Uh,
yeah
which one has
it
got
it
pink on?
has a fridge on it, I think.
Oh,
Yeah,
Three Imaginary Boys, right? Is that what that one's called?
yeah, Three Imaginary Boys. That
Yeah,
I think that's what it is. Yeah, that's
yeah,
amazing as well.
yeah.
Yeah,
They're very early. Yeah.
and like there's a mad stuff by them, but brilliant. And as well as you're listening to some brilliant music, um, you're very eclectic in your music mix, recently. But also anybody who we should look out for. Do you know any albums that are coming out or people that are coming up that are really, or do you think will be good?
Ooh, I
As
wasn't
my
really.
final question, I wanted to ask that.
This is always a tough one. All My Friends. Go see All My Friends bands.
Okay,
Gosh.
I'll get a list now.
Yeah, no, I am. I'm sorry. I don't want to like mention one at the expense of anyone else. Well, the first couple things I mentioned there, just the Beths are
Bets.
they're a new
Yeah.
band, and I love that band a lot. That's a big one. I would recommend. There's an artist called Caroline Rose. She's from our side of the pond. I think she's from Texas. She's great. Um, 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 there's an artist called Creamer out of Tennessee making some great stuff. He's worked with Pat Sansone. Excuse me. There's geez, gosh. Yeah, I don't want to go too far with this for because it's a rabbit hole, and also I'll feel bad about leaving somebody out if I do that. So um, go on my Instagram page and just follow
Yeah.
I follow. Follow all
um,
my friends. They're great.
well, I'll do that then. But I've run out of questions. I've got them all
No.
here.
Oh,
You've done them all brilliantly. I'll say that now. Some of them, you've taught me life lessons on, that I'll definitely think about in the future, and I'm still thinking about now. But thank you so much for joining me on my podcast. Like I really, really appreciate it. I always love when musicians, DJs, authors come onto my podcast because it's always brilliant to talk to people about it,
well,
about music and books.
I'm really glad to be on here. I got to say, when I first came across your podcast, I was like, boy, if I had the access to do that kind of thing when I was your age, I would be doing the same thing, rating songs and doing interviews with people. So it's really cool, and keep it up, man.
Well, some people have to keep the music alive.
That's right. We need
Thank you, John. Thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you so much.
Thanks, man.
Bye. I hope you enjoyed listening to this episode of Logan Sounds Off. You can follow me on X, Facebook, and Instagram at Logan Sounds Off. And don't forget to subscribe and not miss any more cool episodes. Bye, guys!